The distress beacon had been silent for 14 hours when Eli Cross found the crew. They were still strapped into their stations aboard the hauler Ashwood's Fortune, faces locked in expressions that didn't match death by decompression or fire. Their skin had turned the color of old paper, and their eyes had collapsed inward, leaving hollow pits that seemed to go deeper than skulls should allow. The air in the cabin tasted metallic, sweet, wrong. Cross steadied himself against the bulkhead, fighting the instinct to back out of the airlock immediately. He'd seen combat deaths, accident deaths, starvation deaths during the Outer Rim blockades. This was something else. "Command, this is Salvage 7-9er, Cross said into his helmet comm. "I need a xenobiology team at these coordinates. Now." The response crackled through after the usual 3-second delay. "Negative, 7-9er. All XB teams are priority alpha. Log your findings and continue sweep pattern." Cross looked at the nearest body. The woman's uniform identified her as the hauler's captain. Her hands had been reaching for something when she died. The emergency beacon, maybe, or the weapons locker. He couldn't tell which. "Command, I'm looking at 8 dead civilians who dried out from the inside. This wasn't pirates." Silence. Then, "Understood. Document and withdraw. A recovery team will be dispatched when available." When available. Cross had been hearing that phrase for 6 weeks now, ever since the attacks started. 17 colonies had gone dark. 43 ships had been found drifting. And the United Earth Fleet still pretended this was raiders or smugglers or some kind of coordinated insurgency. Cross took samples, photographed everything, and sealed the hauler's logs for retrieval. As he cycled back through the airlock, he allowed himself one last look at the captain's desiccated face. Whatever did this was still out there, and it was getting closer to Earth. The briefing room at Threshold Station was packed beyond fire code when Cross arrived. Every available officer from the defensive perimeter had been recalled. Frigate captains, patrol commanders, even the skeleton crews from the listening posts. Cross found a space against the back wall between 2 other salvage runners who looked as exhausted as he felt. Admiral Haley Grant stood at the podium, her face carved from something harder than regulation suggested. Behind her, the main display showed a tactical map of near-Earth space with 47 red markers scattered like arterial spray. "As of 0600 this morning," Grant said, "we have confirmed contact with a hostile force. They call themselves the Dracovari Ascendancy. Their lead envoy transmitted this message 3 hours ago." The screen switched to an alien figure that made Cross's chest tighten. Reptilian, but wrong. Scales that shifted through colors like oil on water, 3 fingers ending in crystalline claws, eyes that tracked independently. When it spoke, the translation overlay at the bottom of the screen lagged slightly behind its movements. "Humans of Earth, your expansion into our ancestral territories ends now. You have 48 hours to withdraw all military assets beyond the Kuiper Belt. Any ship, station, or colony that remains will be claimed as salvage. Resistance will be met with conversion." Conversion. Cross thought of the dried-out crew aboard Ashwood's Fortune. The alien continued. "We are not unreasonable. We offer you terms. Surrender your weapons, submit to ascendancy governance, and you will be allowed to serve in lesser capacities. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 300 species before you chose wisdom over extinction." The transmission ended. The briefing room stayed silent. Grant let the weight settle before speaking. "Intelligence suggests the Dracovari fleet numbers between 200 and 300 vessels. Our defensive fleet has 87 ships combat ready. They have demonstrated weapons capable of biological disruption at a molecular level, what we're calling desiccation beams. Shields are only partially effective." A captain near the front spoke up. "What about the Etheri, the Tharians? We have mutual defense agreements. Already contacted, Grant said. The Etheri response was, and I quote, "We grieved for your species when we heard of the Drakovari's arrival. The Tharians offered to mediate our terms of surrender." Someone swore quietly. Cross felt his hands curl into fists. Grant's expression didn't change. 43 hours remain on their ultimatum. The Defense Council has authorized protocol threshold. All personnel are hereby informed that as of this moment, this station and every ship in the defensive fleet are operating under last stand orders. There will be no retreat, no negotiation. If we fall together, and we make them pay for every meter. Cross felt something cold and sharp settle in his stomach. Protocol threshold meant the Council had run the numbers, meant they knew how this ended. Grant's gaze swept the room. We have one advantage. The Drakovari think we're prey. They've seen our ships, our weapons, our infrastructure. They've calculated their victory based on observable metrics. What they don't know, what they can't know, is that humans have been preparing for extinction since we first looked up at the stars and realized we were alone. The display behind her changed. A single line of text appeared. Project Prometheus, authorized. Cross had never heard of it. From the expressions around the room, neither had anyone else. In 1968, Grant said quietly, a survey probe discovered something in the Oort cloud. A structure. Not human, not recent. The details remain classified, but what we found there changed everything. Project Prometheus is what we built from those discoveries. It's been waiting in cold storage for 74 years. She paused. And now, we're going to wake it up. The briefing after the main session was limited to 30 officers. Cross wasn't supposed to be there, but Grant had flagged his salvage report, and apparently finding the Ashwood's fortune had earned him a temporary clearance upgrade. The smaller conference room felt too quiet. The tactical display showed a region of space 16 million kilometers from Earth, empty except for a single classified waypoint. Prometheus Station, Grant said. Automated facility, 0 permanent crew. It's been maintaining itself and its cargo for 7 decades. The facility contains 12 devices we call Harbinger-class weapons. Each one is roughly the size of a fighter craft. Each one contains technology we still don't fully understand. A frigate Captain Cross didn't recognize spoke up. What do? They rewrite physics, Grant said simply. Locally, temporarily. The original builders, whoever they were, left detailed instructions. Warnings, really. The devices were designed as a last resort against extinction-level threats. They work by creating recursive causality loops in targeted areas of space. Anything caught inside experiences... She paused. We don't have good terminology. Time becomes nonlinear. Matter becomes probabilistic. Ships caught in the field don't just stop existing. They exist in every possible state simultaneously, and those states begin collapsing into each other. Silence. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. The effect is permanent, Grant continued. Once activated, a Harbinger device creates a dead zone roughly 30,000 kilometers in radius. Nothing that enters that space comes back out. The area becomes fundamentally incompatible with coherent reality. We believe the original builders used these devices to seal away something they couldn't destroy. We're going to use them to seal away the Drakovari. Cross forced himself to speak. And the cost? Grant met his eyes. The Harbinger devices have to be placed manually. They require a minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers before activation, and once armed, They'll detonate if tampered with or if the delivery craft doesn't transmit the proper disarm sequence. Understanding hit Cross like a physical weight. You need pilots who won't be coming back. I need volunteers, Grant corrected. 12 ships, 12 pilots. You'll deliver the devices to predetermined coordinates, arm them, and withdraw. If the Dracovari engage you during placement, you'll need to hold position long enough for the device to lock onto local space-time. If you succeed, you'll have approximately 4 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. 4 minutes. Cross had run enough combat drills to know what that meant. The volunteer ships would be corvettes, maybe light fighters, fast, maneuverable, but fragile. Against a fleet with desiccation beams and overwhelming numbers, 4 minutes might as well be 4 seconds. The devices will be triggered simultaneously, Grant said. If we place them correctly, we'll create a barrier between Earth and the Dracovari fleet, a wall they can't cross. We'll lose ships during placement, probably most of them. But if even 6 devices activate successfully, we seal off our core territories. We survive. Cross looked at the tactical display, at the 12 points arranged in a perfect arc. A constellation of suicide missions. "When do you need an answer?" he asked. Grant's expression softened fractionally. 20 minutes. I'm sorry. I wish we had longer. Cross found Stella Crane in the station's observation deck, staring out at Earth's distant blue curve. She was a shuttle pilot, technically non-combat, but Cross had flown enough patrols with her to know she was steadier under fire than half the fighter jockeys on the roster. "You going to volunteer?" Stella asked without turning. Thinking about it, Cross moved beside her. "You?" "Already did. Signed the papers 5 minutes after the briefing ended." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red. "My daughter's down there. She's 7. I'm not letting those bastards get anywhere near her." Cross didn't have children. Didn't have much of anyone, if he was honest. His parents were gone. His sister lived on Mars, and they hadn't spoken in 3 years. The closest thing he had to family was the crew at Threshold Station, people like Stella, who'd pulled him out of a debris field during the Ganymede incident and refused to let him buy her a drink afterward. "They're calling it a volunteer mission," Cross said quietly. "But we both know Grant's going to get her 12 pilots one way or another. Then I'd rather it be someone who understands what we're protecting." Stella turned back to the viewport. "I've been thinking about this since the first colonies went dark, about what it means that we're out here. We're not special, Cross. We're not chosen. We're just the species that happened to figure out fusion before we blew ourselves up. The universe doesn't care if we survive. So why fight? Because my daughter cares. Because every person down there cares. Because caring is the only thing that makes us different from whatever created those weapons." She smiled without humor. "Also because fuck those reptile bastards and their 300 species. We'll be number 301 who chose extinction over slavery." Cross felt something settle in his chest. Not quite resolve, not quite peace. Something colder and harder. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." Stella nodded. "We should get drunk. We've got—" She checked her comm. 11 minutes before we have to report to Hangar Bay 7. That's almost enough time for 1 beer." "Make it 2, Cross said. "Fast." They made it back with 30 seconds to spare. The 12 volunteer pilots gathered in a hangar bay that had been sealed and reclassified. The Harbinger devices sat in their cradles like oversized missiles, surface black and non-reflective, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift when Cross looked at them directly. Grant stood before them, no longer wearing her admiral's uniform, but a pressure suit identical to theirs. Cross felt shock ripple through the group. "I'll be flying Device 7, Grant said simply. "And before anyone objects, this was my decision. These weapons exist because I authorized their storage. I've known about Prometheus since I made captain. If there's a cost to be paid, I pay it first. She gestured to the tactical display mounted on the hangar wall. The Dracovari fleet is 16 hours from Earth. They're moving in a standard conquest formation. Heavy destroyers at the front, support craft behind, command vessels at the rear. Our defensive fleet will engage at maximum range, draw their attention, make them commit to a frontal assault. While they're focused on that fight, we slip through their flanks and place the devices. One of the other volunteers, Maya Burke, a veteran fighter pilot with gray in her hair, spoke up. "What happens if they realize what we're doing?" "Then you arm your device early and hope you take some of them with you," Grant said. "I won't lie to you. This mission has a projected survival rate of 0%. The math doesn't work in our favor. But if we place even half these devices, we save Earth, we save Mars, we save every colony this side of the belt. That's worth 12 lives." Cross thought about the crew of the Ashwood's Fortune, about the colonies that had gone dark, about Stella's 7-year-old daughter who would never know her mother had died to keep her safe. Grant continued, "You'll launch in 6 hours. Use that time however you need. Write letters, record messages, sleep, pray. It's yours." She paused. "And thank you, all of you. You're the best humanity has to offer." The pilots dispersed. Cross found himself standing beside the device assigned to his ship, a light corvette called the Hollow Crown that had been retrofitted for speed over durability. He thought about recording a message, but there wasn't anyone to send it to. His parents wouldn't hear it. His sister had made it clear she didn't want contact. Instead, Cross ran pre-flight checks 3 times, memorized the device's arming sequence until he could recite it backwards, studied the tactical map until he had every coordinate burned into his brain. When the launch call came, he was ready. The defensive fleet engaged the Dracovari 12 hours ahead of schedule. Cross watched from the Hollow Crown's cockpit as the main force accelerated toward the enemy fleet, weapons hot, broadcasting defiance across every frequency. The Dracovari responded with desiccation beams that carved through shields like they weren't there. The UEF destroyer Threshold lost half its crew in the first exchange, but kept firing. "All Prometheus craft, go!" Grant's voice came through the command channel. "Stealth protocols active. Stay tight." The 12 volunteer ships broke formation, hugging the gravity well of a small asteroid cluster. Cross's sensor display showed the Dracovari fleet fully engaged with the defensive force, exactly as planned. The approach took 90 minutes. Cross watched his fuel reserves tick down, watched the defensive fleet's numbers shrink. The UEF was giving everything to keep the Dracovari focused forward. "Prometheus 7, device placement complete," Grant reported. Her voice was steady, professional. "Arming sequence initiated." One by one, the other pilots called in. Prometheus 4 took fire during placement and detonated early. Cross saw the flash on his sensors, saw the dead zone blossom like a wound in space. The Dracovari ships nearby vanished, just gone. No explosion, no debris, just nothing. "Prometheus 9, I'm hit," Stella Crane's voice cracked through the channel. "Device is armed, but I can't—" Her transmission cut off. Cross's tactical display showed her ship's beacon go dark. 11 devices placed. 5 pilots confirmed dead. The Dracovari were starting to notice the anomalies in their rear formations. "Prometheus 2, placement complete," Cross transmitted. He locked the device's coordinates, initiated the arming sequence, and felt the Hollow Crown shudder as the Harbinger weapon activated. The patterns on its surface began to glow with light that hurt to look at. "Device armed, beginning withdrawal." His sensor board lit up with proximity warnings. 3 Dracovari fighters had broken from the main formation, burning hard in his direction. Cross pushed the Hollow Crown to maximum thrust. The corvette's frame groaned. His fuel reserves dropped toward critical. The Dracovari opened fire. The first beam missed by meters. The second caught his port side, and Cross felt reality twist. His skin went cold and dry. His mouth tasted like dust. His vision doubled. He slammed the emergency medical injector, and the sensation retreated. But his left arm had gone numb. Distance to minimum safe threshold, 41,000 kilometers. The Dracovari were gaining. "Prometheus 2, this is command." A voice that wasn't Grant's came through. "Admiral Grant's ship has been destroyed. Prometheus 7's device is armed and counting down. You have 3 minutes to minimum safe distance." 3 minutes. Cross looked at his fuel gauge, at the closing Dracovari fighters, at the dead zone his device would create when it triggered. He wasn't going to make it. Cross thought about Stella's daughter, about the colonies, about every human who would wake up tomorrow if he succeeded. He cut his engines. The hollow crown drifted, carried by momentum alone. Cross rerouted all power to forward shields and waited as the Dracovari fighters closed the distance. They were 40 seconds behind him. The device was 2 minutes from triggering. The Dracovari ships opened fire together. Cross felt his shields collapse, felt the desiccation beam claw through the cockpit. His skin began to split. His eyes felt like they were boiling. He pressed the emergency beacon, not a distress call, but a localized transmission that told the Harbinger device it was safe to detonate. The device answered. Reality came apart. Cross saw himself from the outside, saw himself from the inside, saw every possible version of himself layered over each other. Cross, who died on Ganymede. Cross, who'd never joined the fleet. Cross, who'd recorded that message to his sister. Cross, who was already dead. Cross, who would live forever in this single crystallized moment. The Dracovari fighters hit the dead zone's edge and scattered into probabilities. Cross watched them become every possible configuration of matter simultaneously. Ships and dust and light and nothing and everything. And then the hollow crown crossed the boundary into normal space. Cross was lying on the cockpit floor. His suit's medical system was screaming about dehydration and cellular damage and radiation exposure. His skin had gone gray. His vision was blurred. But he was alive. The tactical display showed 11 glowing dead zones, arranged in a perfect arc between Earth and the Dracovari fleet. The enemy formation had stopped advancing. They were holding position, scanning the barriers, trying to find a gap. There wasn't one. "Prometheus 2, this is Threshold Station," the command channel crackled. "Confirm status." Cross tried to speak. His throat felt like sandpaper. "Still here," he managed. "You're 10,000 kilometers inside minimum safe distance. You should have been caught in the cascade." "Yeah," Cross said. "Should have." He looked at the device's final telemetry, saw that he'd triggered it early, 0.7 seconds before full cascade. Just enough time for the hollow crown's momentum to carry him clear. 0.7 seconds. The difference between extinction and survival. "Get back here, Prometheus 2, command said. "We've got medical teams standing by." Cross adjusted his heading toward Threshold Station, but kept one eye on the tactical display. The Dracovari fleet was retreating, pulling back toward the outer system. They'd tested the barriers and found them impassable. Humanity had built a wall made of broken physics and suicide runs. And it had held. 3 weeks later, Cross stood in the observation deck where he'd last spoken with Stella Crane. The dead zones were visible from Earth now, dark patches in the sky where no light escaped, where space itself had been permanently wounded. They'd recovered 4 pilots alive. Grant wasn't among them. Neither was Stella. The Dracovari had withdrawn completely. Intelligence suggested they'd sent a message back to the Ascendancy, something that translated roughly to unsuitable for conversion. Other species were taking notice. The Aetheri had sent an official apology. The Tharians had requested a defense treaty. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy by building walls from the corpses of its own people. Cross's sister had sent a message. It was waiting in his queue. He hadn't opened it yet. Instead, he watched the dead zones and thought about Stella's 7-year-old daughter, who was alive because her mother had chosen to protect something bigger than herself. He thought about Grant, who'd paid her own debts first. He thought about the crew of the Ashwood's Fortune, dried out and dead in their chairs because someone had decided they were prey. The Dracovery had asked humanity to choose wisdom over extinction. Humanity had chosen neither. They'd chosen to make extinction expensive enough that even predators had to think twice. Cross finally opened his sister's message. It was short, just 3 words. "I'm sorry. Come home." He looked at the dead zones one more time, at the permanent scars humanity had carved into space as a warning to anything that thought the species was easy prey. Then he went to request a transfer to Mars. Some walls, he thought, were worth building, and some were worth walking through.